Hi, my name is Anidora. I'm the podcast producer for What Is Your Story? In one of our previous episodes, we spoke to you about Mofiyinfoluwa, who shared her story, how she desired to be seen and loved, and how that led her down a dark path. We sat down with Mofiyin again in a different season of her life, one that is marked by healing and a deeper connection with herself and with God. She opens up about what recovery looks like, how it was slow, how it was messy, how she felt despair and overwhelming depression. Mofiyin talks about living with endometriosis and how her faith played a huge role in helping her out of that deep dark hole. She doesn't just speak for herself on this episode, she speaks to every young girl who has been told to be quiet and who has learned to normalize pain. If Mofiyinfoluwa's story resonates with you and you would also like to share yours, click the casting form link in our description box and sign up to be a guest on our show. Or you can go on our website, Noisy Streets. The streets has 2 S's, and register in our casting call. It's noisystreets.com. Click on casting call and we will contact you. All right, I'll let you guys get to it.
You are now listening to an episode of What Is Your Story by Noisy Podcast. Enjoy!
Hello, my name is Mofiyinfoluwa, and this is my story. I often say that sometimes a woman's body can be something of a battleground, and I don't know if there's a way to fight a battle but not know that you are at war. But I think that's kind of what happened to me when I finally got diagnosed with endometriosis in October of 2022. Everything really started in Buari, in the middle of nowhere, sharing a tiny border with Niger State and Abuja, where I had been cast away to do my bar part 1 in order to become a qualified lawyer in Nigeria. In Buari, I lived off campus in this tiny Williams courtyard, that was the name, and the walls were pale blue with bougainvillea all over. And for such a dry and sometimes lonely place, I found so much of a sanctuary for myself in Buari in Williams courtyard, and I would often just be by myself in my room drinking bottles of Origin and reading poetry. It was there that I first of all noticed that my digestive health was giving me a lot of trouble. It seemed like everything I ate upset my belly, was constantly making me go to the bathroom. And in March or April of 2021, I got diagnosed with an E. coli infection, meaning that my entire digestive system had shut down and needed to be built back up with probiotics. But in between all this while, because I'd been quite sexually active, I was constantly having issues with bacterial vaginosis or yeast infections, or my reproductive health had just been like pretty topsy-turvy. And one thing that had always really helped me was that I had a very sex-positive older sister who would constantly follow me to clinics, make sure I got tested, and I could speak very plainly to her about whatever was going on in my body. So whenever my vaginal pH was acting funny and I was very itchy or something was wrong or weird, I could talk to her. And she had taught me this all the way from when I was in university. I was a regular at the sexual health clinic at my university, where they would often give us condoms, give us free birth control, and where I learned how to speak very clearly about what was going on inside my body. You know, the way we're raised in this part of the world, we are raised in a way that robs us of the vocabulary of our bodies. So many people will never say the word vagina. So many people don't know what is labia majora or minora. There are women that think that where you pee is your vagina, not knowing that urine actually comes out of the urethra and your vagina is an entirely different opening in and of itself. So there's a kind of almost ignorance about the workings of our bodies and the machinery of our reproductive health. And I was above this a little bit, but as my body continued to give me issues and I continued to try to figure things out, I just continued plodding along. I was seeing a lovely gentleman at the time, and one day we were being intimate, and in the middle of it, I just felt a stabbing pain on my inside. The only way I can really describe it is that it felt like being penetrated with a blunt knife. It wasn't a precise and sharp pain, it was dull and heavy and unrelenting, and I tried to manage it because I didn't want to ruin the mood, but it was unrelenting, and eventually I screamed. And I remember the look in his eyes. He was terrified, like, we're having so much fun 1 minute, how can this babe be shouting, and not the good kind of shouting at this point? And I was just in such terrible pain, and I became very afraid. I'd never felt that kind of pain before. I did not know what it meant, and I decided that I was just going to ignore it. I have a reputation for being a crybaby and for bringing things up all the time and disturbing people. So I was like, nah, this time around, I'm actually going to chest it. But every single time that we tried to get intimate after that, the pain continued. It was unrelenting until eventually we couldn't have penetrative sex anymore. And that really made me sad. I felt like I was losing something that I really enjoyed. I was very confused, but I just decided to continue trudging along. And then suddenly after, I started to feel a very low pain in my lower left abdomen. I didn't know what it was. It would pinch and release. I thought, okay, maybe this is my period, maybe this is ovulation, maybe there's something happening. But the pain was unrelenting. And eventually one day I went and I told my mom, I said, nah, something is going on in my body. My body does not feel right. And she was like, you've come again, Joe. It's always one thing with you, Joe. I beg, like, leave this matter. But I was like, nah, I insist that something is wrong. And eventually we went to get tested at the Bola Tinubu Diagnostic Center, somewhere in Ikeja GRA. And when I went there, they did an abdominal pelvic scan for me. And as soon as the lab attendant took the probe to my lower left abdomen, I winced in pain. And he looked at me very closely. He was like, that's hurting you, right? So I was like, yes. He was like, yes, because there is a hemorrhagic cyst in your left ovary. Now, cysts are usually made of water, and cysts are very common for women, and they just make themselves essentially out of nothing in our bodies. But cysts are usually made of water. But this cyst was hemorrhagic. It was made of blood. And it was a huge cyst nestled in the center of my left ovary. And as soon as we got into the car and I told my mom, I saw immediately the panic set into her eyes, because she hated that I was right about whatever was wrong with me and I wasn't just making something up. And I eventually opened up to her as well about the painful sex. I was like, this is happening and this is also happening. And I remember the morning I told her, I was so afraid, because how do you tell your Nigerian mommy that you're having sex and it's paining you? Like, that was a conversation I was terrified about. But my mom has done such a good job of building a friendship with us, her children. And I kept thinking, if something is very, 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 very wrong with me, is it not better that I tell her? Is it not better that we try and figure this out together, as opposed to the shame and guilt of the fact that maybe I was sexually active and that was not something that she approved of, keeping me stuck and away from the potential of my healing? I always tell people that my mother's openness to hearing about what I was going through was one of the key reasons that I was able to be diagnosed early. Women go years, decades without ever being able to properly diagnose endometriosis, because it's a very slippery condition, and it's a condition usually arrived at by elimination. But because I could open up to my mom, I'll never forget that day. She had this long gold shuku and bright red nails, and she was just sitting in my room. And I just told her, I was like, Mommy, when I try to have sex, it hurts me very badly inside. And she asked me to describe the pain, and I did. And she stood up and looked at me for a long time. Then she said, go and call Dr. Olu. Dr. Olu is our family gynecologist, and I'd never gone to see him before because I'd never had any gynecological issues up until that point. I'm a 23-year-old healthy girl at this time. My periods have been regular for most of my life. I'd never had any reason to look very closely at my reproductive health. And so when I went to see him, at the time, I'd asked my partner at the time to follow me, and my mom was not happy. And I know that it's because she thought, if there's something wrong with you in this area of your life, it might affect fertility, and you shouldn't go with the man that we're hoping maybe one day he will marry you before he will go and hear that something you're defective and you're broken goods. But I was not with a man that could let me do difficult things by myself. He insisted on following me, and I was very grateful for his presence. And I sat in Dr. Olu's office in Yaba. His name was Office OAM Specialist. They are specialists with gynecology. And he took detail to explain to me the fact that my cyst was made of blood suggested that it was endometriosis and not PCOS. And so this is how endometriosis works. Endometriosis is a gynecological disorder where the material that belongs in your uterus, every month women get periods, and your periods are essentially the thickening of your uterine walls, which eventually gives way and flows as blood coming out of you. But the thickening of your uterine walls is made of endometrial tissue, and legitimately, endometrial tissue should only be in your uterus. What happens with endometriosis is that the endometrial tissue that belongs only in your uterus begins to manifest in other parts of your body and of your anatomy. So at its core, endometriosis is a disease of displacement. It's what happens where something that belongs somewhere ends up in another place. So for me, there was endometrial tissue in my ovaries. For some people, the endometrial tissue is close to their bladders. It's on their kidneys. In really extreme cases, stage 4 endometriosis, the endometrial tissue can be in your lungs and create blood clots that suffocate women and kill them. It is a very complex and just mind-boggling disease. And one of the only ways to detect endometriosis is by an endoscopy, something that goes inside of you to see what's happening. And so I was prepped for an endoscopy, and I was put under the anesthesia. And an endoscopy, they put a little camera inside you. It goes in through your belly button. And when the endoscopy was done, it was confirmed that I had endometriosis and that we would need to begin treatment. In order to treat endometriosis, essentially what happens is that you need to stop creating endometrial tissue. And the only way to stop creating endometrial tissue is to stop menstruating, which is why a lot of times people will say that if you have endometriosis, the first advice they'll give is that you should go and get pregnant. Because if you do get pregnant, you will not have a menstrual cycle for 10 weeks, and the endometrial tissue can be starved of developing and will leave all those other parts of your body alone. But I was a 23-year-old girl who had just gotten a fully funded master's to go to the US to study creative writing. I was not about to get pregnant. And I was also not about to have my left ovary taken out or have any kind of really super invasive surgery. So he explained to me that this is what was going to happen. They were going to put me in a state of pseudo-pregnancy. They were going to administer to me a hormonal cocktail that would make it such that my body thought I was pregnant, so I would not have a period for the next 10 months.
Are you enjoying this episode so far? If you love stories that make you feel at home and you love reading December love stories, check out our anthology, A Man and a Woman and Other Stories. You can get a copy of this book at Roven Heights Bookstore in Nigeria or at Vidya Bookstore in Ghana. You can also check out the link in our description box below for all of this information. Noisy Streets also hosts monthly book club meetings every last Saturday of the month. You can find all the information you need in the box below. Okay, let's get back to the episode.
In order for this to happen, I was administered 60 mg of artificial progesterone, Primolut N, and I had to take 6 of these pills daily, every day for 10 months. It was horrific. The side effects of these hormonal medication meant that I was severely depressed. I was always crying. I used to sleep for like 12 hours a day, and I was always hungry. I was so hungry, it felt like I wanted to eat the whole world. And perhaps the most painful thing was just the depth of the hormonal depression combined with the very physical pain. Endometriosis is painful. Pain is the number one symptom. Pain is the number one notifier. Pain. I was in constant horrific levels of pain. Sometimes my cramps would be so bad that they would wake me up from sleep. I would be sleeping and I would cramp myself awake. More than that, I could be having a conversation with my mom and we're laughing and gisting, and I just burst into tears mid-conversation. I put on quite a lot of weight, then lost all of it, and in all this time, my libido was non-existent. It was like my body did not even know what they were calling sex again. My whole mind and my whole body just shut down to any form of sexual exploration. And I used to cry a lot. Just used to sit in my bathroom and cry. And my older sister, she would just come and sit beside me in the bathroom with her dog, and we would sit there for hours just staring at each other in silence, and she'd just watch me cry and hold my hand. It's still one of my most striking moments of that time in my life, that just the quietness of somebody's presence can be the only thing they can offer you when you are in a world of such deep pain. At this time, it was also only my faith that really kept me going. People often talk about encounters as beautiful things that sound very nice, but endometriosis was my encounter. Sickness was my encounter, because I didn't have anything else except my God. In that place of what endometriosis felt like, where sex was no longer a possibility, even just feeling good in my body was no longer a possibility. Everything that I had hinged my sense of self and my desirability on, it all came crumbling down. Bless my partner at the time. He tried so hard to be there for me, but it seemed like my pain was a place that even he could not reach me in. I remember one time he said, "What I'm feeling is despair." And despair is deeply personal. You're the only person in it. Everybody else is just telling you sorry. Everybody else is just trying to reach across to you and help you. But you are the only one in the eye of your own personal storm, and everybody else can just help you. I'll never forget a day that I went to church. I go to Elevation in Maryland, and the whole service I was on my knees just crying. And I slept off like that on my knees on the chair in church. I cannot remember the sermon. I cannot remember anything. All I know is that at some point, I got so tired of praying that the only prayers I had left were tears. The only prayers I had left were, "God, hope you are seeing me. Hope you can see what is happening on the inside of me." And I wrote a lot. I journaled constantly. It seemed like my pen and my faith and my people were the only things that could be pillars for me in that time. My mom would lay hands on me and pray over me every morning. She would take shea butter and rub it into my belly and call me pretty names and make me laugh. One time I sent my brother a message. I said, "I think I'm depressed." He sent back, said, "Don't be depressed, homie." And I remember that I laughed so much, and those were just the tiny moments of joy that I had. So I did my surgery in October of 2021, and I started my treatment that October as well. By February of the next year, I remember one day I called my gynecologist. I said, "How much is your hysterectomy? Come and remove the womb, the ovary, come and scrape everything out of me. I'm not doing this anymore." And he was like, the issue with that is, if you do a hysterectomy, you are propelled into early menopause, and that's its own kind of kettle of worms altogether if you just push yourself into early menopause. But one thing that I was so grateful for was how attentive my doctor was. I could call him at any time. Maybe, caveat, he is my family member, so maybe he was giving me special treatment or whatever. But I know that him being the kind of doctor that I could tell things, that I could be like, "This medicine make me want to kill myself," and he would take me seriously. He would be like, "Yeah, the side effects can be like that." My symptoms were not dismissed. Nobody told me that it was all in my head, or even that they tried to pray it away or tell me. I was taken seriously at every point, and I know that this is such a rare outcome. Just a few months before this, I would try to go to the clinic, or I'd see stories of people on Twitter that whenever they try to go and buy Plan B, the pharmacist would be shouting at them. And I know that the sex negative culture of Nigeria means that when it comes to things of a sexual nature and you're having health issues in that area, you can't even talk. You whisper to your friends, and oftentimes your friends don't know any better than you. So all of you are confused and whispering. I have an essay that's titled Songs of Freedom, and in it I write about the fact that being able to open your mouth and talk clearly with safety about what is going on with you is what is the bottom level thing you need to be able to access good health care. I write a lot about the fact that non-fiction as a genre, which is what I write, stories about real life, is important because this is one of the only places that we can talk clearly and confidently about our real lives without that fear of being misunderstood, of being judged, of having to look in the face of that your auntie and let her find out that you're having sex before marriage, that you're a little Jezebel. And the fact that if you are perceived like that, it automatically means that you cannot get the treatment that you need. If you can't say, "When I have sex, it is painful, I need help," you're never going to get to "I need help." You're going to stop at "when I have..." and it will hook in your mouth, and that'll be the end of your story, and ultimately the end of your healing. You're never going to get to that point. But I was very fortunate. I always say that I was very fortunate. I'm not the common story. I'm the outlier. I'm the outlier, especially because I was able to be diagnosed so early on, and I underwent a very rigorous and painful treatment. It's not always that way, but that's the choice that my doctor and I reasoned and got to, that I would be put in this state of pseudo pregnancy for 10 months. And at the end of that 10-month mark, I'll never forget, I think I even went to do my test a few months shy, May of 2022. I went back to Bola Tinubu Diagnostic Center and I checked, and they told me that the cyst was gone. And I remember I was parked in the car. I was just crying and saying, thank God, thank God, thank God. I called my mom. She was crying and she said something. She said, Fi, Ọlọ́run fi ojú àdúrà tì ẹ́. And that means that God did not make you ashamed for your prayers. And I think that knowing God as my friend and as someone who cares and takes care of me was made most prevalent to me during my struggle with endometriosis. To young Nigerian women, one thing I want to say is that please be aware of your body. Nobody knows your body better than you. When something feels funny, when your period is late by a few days for no seemingly good reason, when you feel a tender pain somewhere, especially anything in your lower belly, your lower abdomen, because that's where your uterus is resting, don't brush it off. If somebody brushes it off for you, don't answer them. People always say that I'm always shouting, I'm always crying, I don't even know how to manage any pain. It's because of that I'm always shouting, I'm always crying, that I was able to make enough noise in order to get the treatment. Make noise about your bodies. Tweet about it. Tell your mommy, tell your daddy, tell your uncle, tell everybody consistently. Let it be, so that nobody will say, that was happening to her. We didn't even know. No, you know, because we've said it. Also, be very open to, finding out about gynecological resources from other people. Sometimes you don't want to ask among your family because your gynecologist will tell your mom or your dad, whatever it is that you discuss with them in confidence. The great people over here will put out resources that will guide you towards spaces where your stories can be handled with more safety and you can get the kind of help that you need. Listen to stories, listen to people. When you hear your friend saying she had a funny symptom, don't brush over it. Pause and listen. Has that ever happened to me? Is my also this going this? Be curious about women's bodies in general, and please learn about your biology, learn about your menstrual cycle, about the luteal phase and the follicular phase. They didn't teach us all these things in school. When they were teaching us period in class in essay, everybody was laughing, ha. People were being shy. You better leave that one. This is a fight for your life, literally. My people perish for a lack of knowledge, and that applies mostly to women. Our bodies are so delicate. Everything is so fine-tuned. Your period blood being a different color might mean something. Your discharge being a different consistency might mean something. Don't shy away from your body. Be up close with your body fluids, with how your breasts feel, with how your vagina looks and feels and what's coming out of it. Don't let these be things that you think are too cringy or it's too ill or you just I don't really know. No, in this scenario, being familiar with your body's biology and being knowledgeable about it could actually save your life. And read a book, read a poem. Ada Nwadike has an essay in Lowey titled If a Bird Wishes to Fly, and it was the first piece of creative nonfiction that I read about a Nigerian woman dealing with endometriosis. And honestly, the Abebi Afro Nonfiction Foundation was born from me encountering that story and me realizing that Nigerian women being able to tell stories about our bodies is something I want to invest in, is something that I want to see made possible, because I know that reading that essay, one, made me feel that I was not alone. Two, it made me understand that I can turn my pain into art. Three, it made me understand that art can be educative as well as entertaining. These stories don't just fall from heaven. They are the lived experiences of women being shared on the page with you. It's a kind of communion. It's a kind of offering. It's where the title of my book comes from. My Body Broken for You. I'm letting you see everything that happened inside me. It's almost like a sacrifice. And it's so that none of us is left behind. It's so that none of us become strangers to ourselves and to our bodies. And so with endometriosis, so anything that your body might be doing that you're not sure of, pay attention and talk about it. Thank you very much for listening.
We hope that you enjoyed listening to this episode of What Is Your Story by Noisy Podcast. If you would like to be a guest on the show, please click in the link in the description box below. And don't forget to share, leave a comment, and like this episode. Also follow us on all of our social media at noisy.podcast. Okay, I'll see you the same time next week. Bye.